So we're going to have a panel now. I'm going to call the panelists up, and if everyone wants to come up and as I introduce you, and then we can go through a few of the speakers just to give a quick intro about their take on the single-sex spaces. So I'm going to call up EMER MURPHY, who is a friend of Wicklow Women, and she's going to come up and talk about her experience in the workplace. We're also going to call Fiona McInerney back up again, returning to the panel. And just to mention, Fiona has 5 free copies of her audiobook. There's a box at the back of the room if you want to put your name in the hat there. We're also going to bring up DANIELLE LOUGHRey. DANIELLE is the co-director, along with Mary-Anne McNulty, of Gaels For Fair play. The network advocating for fairness for women and girls in Gaelic Games, and Anne-Marie unfortunately can't be here today. We're also going to call up ANNAIG BIRDY, joining the panel. She's a campaigner and spokesperson associated with Not All Gays, advocating for open discussion and diversity of perspectives within the LGBT community. And lastly, we're going to call up DANIELLE LOUGHRey. She is Director of Sports and spokesperson for the Countess, who has been campaigning for fairness and safety in female sport. So I think maybe we'll start with you, Emer, if you want to just give us a bit about your story, and I'll give you, we've got a mic, and then we can go to the other panelists. And thank you.
Is that on now?
Yeah. Just keep it nice and close so everyone can.
Okay, great. So, thanks very much. I did write out a little bit, so I'll fly through it as quick as we can. I know we're up against time. I watched and read about what was happening across the world, and I saw women accused of bigotry for refusing to accept that men could become women. Women were being silenced, losing jobs. Men were entering women's sports and claiming awards. Violent men were placed in women's prisons. Men and women's rape crisis centres and homeless hostels. I wondered when it would reach my door. Would it pass me by in this little corner of the world, or would I have to face it head on? In 2023, I found out. A new HR director started in work, a large national organisation with over 9,000 employees, plus operations in the UK, the Middle East and across the world. So in came a new approach, including a DEI manager, and they got to work. First came a call for expressions of interest in a gender employee resource group. It sounded like something worth keeping an eye on, so I volunteered. Mostly it was women doing unpaid HR work to advance their careers. Then I received draft gender identity and expression policy for feedback. I gave detailed comments on the definitions: cis and trans, assigned sex at birth, intersex, transitioning at work, and the mandatory use of pronouns, plus employees choosing showers, changing rooms and toilets based on their preferred gender identity. The 2 main issues, as you might guess, were men allowed in women's showers, changing rooms and toilets if they wished, and the required use of preferred pronouns, calling a man she, her, and a woman he, him, with disciplinary action for non-compliance. Managers had to enforce this on their teams and comply themselves. Bear in mind that this policy is for all locations in Ireland, UK, Middle East, and anywhere we do business internationally. So my feedback caused a stir. The DEI manager met me, and I wisely brought a colleague as witness and support. I raised concerns for women who don't want to undress with male colleagues present, and for our employees from over 50 countries. Many of the cultures and faiths that protect women's intimate spaces from men. I was told my views were transphobic, and so were those cultures. Next, my HR manager met me off-site, spending an hour urging kindness, telling me how all my colleagues were kind and understanding to those who had already transitioned to work, and the implication was obvious that I must behave like that too. Ultimately, she pulled rank and no compromise was forthcoming. Thankfully, I found a small group of like-minded women, and for the next 2 years we highlighted the problems. I raised it in meetings with the managing director and senior managers. They all deferred to the HR manager, and I insisted that it was both legally and ethically required. We eventually won a concession. The policy was amended to state that preferred pronouns were now optional, though not using them was rude. But access to women's showers and changing rooms remained unchanged. Tenny and Belong To had been paid handsomely for training and advice which prioritised one group's inclusion over women's privacy and safety. The final step was a risk assessment carried out by the company. It focused narrowly on the probability of physical attack in the changing room, ignoring privacy, embarrassment or fear. Nothing about women with histories of domestic abuse or assault, forced to share locked, closed spaces with men. Nothing about women of faith or young women fearing for their careers, or older women like me who simply don't want a man present while undressing. There are three things about this whole situation that I found to be equally dystopian or hilarious, if you can appreciate the dark humour. One, where I work, any man who has the balls to say he wants to use the women's showers is allowed to. But if I ask that man if he has a gender recognition certificate, then I'm invading his privacy. And three, management told me that because there's no legal definition of man and woman, that anyone can be anything they feel like. This is just my story, but it's happening in workplaces across Ireland and across the world. Policies like these erode women's hard-won protections in the name of progress. I'll keep speaking up.
I'm going to stand up because I get very nervous when I'm sitting down talking. I'd rather stand up, so sorry. So yeah, my name's DANIELLE LOUGHRey. I'm the co-founder of Gaels For Fair alongside Mary-Anne McNulty, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. We're a network of players, coaches, volunteers advocating for the protection of female-only categories in Gaelic Games, especially within the Ladies Gaelic Game Football Association. In Ireland and I suppose across the world, single-sex sports is a prominent part of everyone's life. The main sport here in Ireland is Gaelic football. Our national games have always been organised around 6 categories. This enables everyone across the board to develop their skills and compete in environments that are tailored to their physical attributes. The maintenance of these single-sport sports promotes equal opportunities and nurtures talent in our young people. It also encourages greater participation and encouragement in sport. Having an exclusive female-only category enriches safe and fair competition. It allows players to compete against others with similar physical abilities and strengths, and it helps to ensure that achievements are based on skills and dedication rather than biological differences. The introduction of the Gender Recognition Act has undermined the fundamental right for these single-sex sports. A report on the general scheme for a gender recognition bill in 2023, which was given to the Houses of the Oireachtas in January 2013 to 2014. Under head 26 of the report, it was recommended that sports bodies be allowed to regulate events to prohibit participation of transgender persons as it is deemed necessary to secure fair competition and the safety of other competitors. But somehow, by the time the Act was introduced in 2015, this recommendation to protect sex categories was completely left out of it. So as many have said here today, like, gender is an internal and social construct that can change and flutter about. Sex is biological and it cannot be changed. Sport is not and shouldn't be organised as per people's feelings. It should be organised by biological sex. In particular, under the GRA, Section 18 is where I see the serious consequences, not just for sports, but for respect for female rights across the board. That's the one where it says that you think you're a man or that you are. So gender identity is, or preferred gender as it is called throughout the Act, shouldn't trump our biological sex. Our sex is part of our DNA, and that's the way I see sports need to be split into sections. Even Section 9 of our Equal Status Act refers to non-discriminating clubs. It's not discrimination to cater for the needs of a particular gender or sex, as I like to say. In relation to sporting facilities and events, the different treatment and the purposes of facilities and events is reasonably necessary. Therefore, under the Equal Status Act, it is not discrimination to have a women's only sports team. The LGFA has repeatedly stated in emails that it had a legal obligation to introduce its current transgender policy. However, after numerous requests for proof of this obligation, none has been forthcoming from them. The GRA does not compel sports bodies to allow females into female sport categories. Sport Ireland published its guidance for transgender inclusion in sport in March 2024. Nowhere in that guidance was it stated that any sport national governing body had to introduce a transgender policy. The guidance does, however, state that inclusion through self-identification is not acceptable by the vast majority of people working and taking part in sports who all favour the protection of the female category. The UK Sports Council, which Fiona referred to earlier on, published in 2021, also came to the conclusion that for many sports the inclusion of transgender people, fairness and safety cannot coexist in a sports model. So now not only do ladies Gaelic football players have to constantly battle for equality in the media, they also must again battle for fair and safe sport. Some people like to say, but sure, the LGFA have approved only a few male players into the ladies game, so what is the big deal? Well, the big deal is, like we've been saying, one is one too many. That one male has now already affected the lives of the 20 other females in that squad. When that one male takes to the pitch in a match, he also affects the 30 females on the other team. When that team with the one male player plays against the other 9 teams in their division, he affects 270 female players of the opposition teams. The presence of that one man affects almost 300 females. And that's just in one league, one division. The safeguarding of our children and adults has been thrown out the window. Not only do these policies increase the risk of injury on the playing field, but forfeit our right to dignity and privacy in our changing rooms, which is a serious concern. Today in Sligo, the LGFA is actually holding its annual Congress. A motion was sent for inclusion in Congress by a club. It read, amend Rule 46 to read, all registered female from birth members shall be eligible to play for a club, county or province. This motion has not been included in the motions to be voted on today. Why not? Who knows? The LGFA has not sent any correspondence to the club involved as to why it hasn't been included for discussion today at Congress. The LGFA, in a very strongly worded letter from a solicitor sent to Gaels For Fair Play, stated that there would be a review of the policy in September 2025. This never took place. The LGFA and the policy itself states that a review will take place a minimum of every 3 years. It has been over 3 years and still no review has taken place. The law should reflect the reality of the world we live in. The Gender Recognition Act doesn't do that. The GRA allows sports bodies to hide behind it with these policies. The LGFA transgender policy must go, and single-sex female categories must be protected for a safe and fair environment for all our girls and women. I'll just finish up by just saying simply, no one can change sex.
So obviously, you know, prisons, rape crisis centres, sports, they're all extremely important. But as Sandra said earlier, the adult cross-dressing men need children, but they also need L, G and B, and they have plumbed onto lesbians, gays and bisexuals since the beginning. That is why Belong To has been so instrumental in even enforcing the GRA. Myself and Sean, who many of you know, he's in the audience. When we attended Belong To when we were teenagers, probably about 10 years ago now, they were asking these minors who were confused, a lot of them autistic, anorexic, bulimic, self-harming, who were getting applauded for gender identity, to write to TDs, despite them not being voting age, to ask them to lower the age of the GRA, and to write from their personal testimony, oh, I really need the GRA. So they have always used lesbian, gays and bisexuals to do it, and as a result, lesbians have dealt with this twofold. We have cross-dressing men in our spaces, like all women are dealing with, but there's no lesbian spaces left for us. There's a lesbian-owned bar that used to be more catered towards the lesbians in Dublin, and myself and many actual lesbians who know that men can't be lesbians have been barred permanently from that bar just for being there. And because we're troublemakers and the wrong kind of lesbians, I guess. And the place is absolutely chock full. Like, they're saying it's a tiny minority. If you walked into that bar now, you just, like, 90% of them, most evenings, are men, and men pretending to be women. And they're in the bathrooms, despite a woman being sexually assaulted in the bathrooms of that bar. The same in the George, though the George is much stronger on keeping men out. But they have drag queens in there, but the trans-identified men as well, and then just like random men that don't seem to be pretending to be women. So there's no lesbian bar in Ireland, but there's also no lesbian bar in the UK. It's the same across the States. There's none, because they've created this false legal fiction that men can be women, and therefore men, for a tenner, bear in mind it's a tenner in Ireland to become a woman. You just walk into a solicitor's office, I've seen many of them do it, fill out a little form, and it's €10 and that's it. You're a woman for all intents and purposes, but then you're also therefore able to claim that you're a lesbian. So any protections for us, you know, our right to marry, that we got in 2015 as well, that basically doesn't make any, like, there's no point in it anymore, because, and that win makes no sense anymore, because now men can be lesbians and they can marry a woman. So it's a heterosexual couple and they're claiming it's gay marriage. Just because he has a nice wig on or whatever. But they did that as well. They used gay rights and they used our gay marriage rights. Very sweetly, they say, oh, there was consultations. Yeah, it was all privately done by members of TENI, by trans-identified men, people involved and belong to, all stakeholders who really, really wanted men to be women. And that was all done privately. There was no public consultation for the GRA. And then a trans-identified man is on record in the Department of Foreign Affairs, gloating about the fact that they used our marriage rights to slip it in like the glory while everyone was kind of celebrating gay marriage. That they did this in like under the darkness of night behind us, using our win to push in the GRA, and it was just passed very quietly. Which is just so they've always used us, but they used it to push the GRA, basically then nullifying the point of same-sex attraction and any protections that we had fought for a really long time in this country. But then the second element of it, yes, there's these men, the lesbian sons, as I like to joke about them. But then also now a lot of lesbians who, by these lobby groups and the trans activists, a lot of young lesbians particularly are targeted. They're gender non-conforming, they're just, you know, butch lesbians, mask lesbians, whatever you want to call them, tomboys, being told, no, actually you're not a lesbian, you're distressed, you're coming to terms with your sexuality, maybe your parents don't really agree with you being gay, or you feel like they won't. I know personally a lot of the trans-identified female friends that I had back in the Belong To days said was because they realised, oh, I like girls and my parents are against that. They wouldn't accept it for me. And I grew up and I liked playing with Spider-Man toys or Batman toys instead of like the Barbie dolls that my sister liked to play with. So that's how I knew. That's how I knew I was a boy, was because they liked playing football rather than, it's just, like, which is so upsetting because when I was growing up, that used to be just, oh yeah, you're a tomboy. Doesn't make you any less of a girl. But they're being told now, no, you're not a lesbian, you're actually a straight man in a woman's body. So lesbians get it from both sides. We're dealing with the lesbian sons, who are like, just go away, but we can't do anything about it because of the GRA. And then all of these young lesbians are now convinced and lied to by TENI, belong to Leo Varadkar, etc., etc., in schools as well, because of belong to. They're being told, oh yeah, you should bind your breast, you should amputate your breast. If they want to go all the way, like mutilate your forearm and fashion it into that, I don't like, cylinder shaped thing. It's just grotesque, like it's really grotesque, and I don't know how these doctors have gotten away with it for so long, because they're mutilating. And the CAS report did say that it was 70 to 90%, depending on which clinic or who was going. They were same-sex attracted young people. Almost all of these teenagers presenting at the top stop were same-sex attracted. They were lesbians, gays, or bisexuals who were just gender non-conforming, figuring out their sexuality, probably a lot of them on the autism spectrum, or dealing with anorexia, bulimia, and other comorbidities. And there was a running joke in the top stop that there would be no gay people left at the rate that they were doing this to us, that they were mutilating us and castrating us with chemicals at such a high rate, and they knew that they were doing this to us, that there'd be none of us left, actually calling ourselves gay. And this has come out in the CAS report, and how those clinicians haven't been pulled up on that and thrown in prison. You're doing gay conversion on us, knowingly, joking about it, and the government knows now, the UK government knows. And just back to like this, Brenda had said about the Catholic Church and how we've gone, no, we're going the whole other way. Look how progressive we are. We don't do Catholic Church. I thought that the Supreme Court ruling, the CAS report, would be kind of a watershed moment here, possibly, because Barbie Kardashian for some reason wasn't. For the general public, but they've gone now, it's not just, oh, we're so not the Catholic Church anymore. It's like, that's a Brit thing. That's a UK thing. Look how not English we are, and how not, because obviously we're independent now. Look how not English we are, and how not British we are. And some of the journalists even said, and actually some of the politicians said at the time, when it was brought up by TDs in the Dáil, going, oh, are we going to have a look at, the UK Supreme Court ruling? They go, how dare you? How dare you expect us? Like, I think it's really shameful that we'd consider English law, like we fought so hard to not deal with English law, and all the while just completely neglecting the fact that this is a parasite on lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, and they did it so successfully because they needed to. I think it was Kate Harris that said recently, and I'll wrap up in a second, she was on GB News the other day discussing how this happened, and it started in the 90s with the T being added, because it wasn't always LGBT, and then in Ireland and the UK it became like very normalised to have the T, Q and the plus, and the plus is the dangerous thing, because what does that actually mean? What is in the plus? And it's the same people who were advocating for paedophile exchange, information exchange, NAMBLA, and they tried to glom on to lesbians, gays and bisexuals, because we were gaining so much ground in terms of people accepting us, and we have fought so hard over the many decades that there's been a fight for gay liberation, that to go, no, we're actually not those people, we are not predators, we're not that. But now it's the same thing, and they saw this, the T, Q, and whatever is in the plus, which is very frightening when you actually dive it. They have successfully glommed on because of the likes of the media and belong to and all of this, but it started in school, started with young people to justify these men, including the PI and NAMBLA ones that are included in the plus. And I don't know how we, like, obviously with Not All Gays, we are saying not all gays are, like, we're separate from you, from this TQ, you do that over there, it's nothing to do with us. But I don't know how we change, and maybe some of the more journalist, politician types can try, and maybe in the Q&A we can discuss, like, how do we actually gain public consciousness of this and get them to stop lumping us together.
So I suppose, is it working? I just wanted to
just got to go really close to it so everyone at the back can hear you.
So yeah, so I suppose to tie in a lot of the thematic kind of discussion of the morning, I thought it'd be helpful to go back to really what we mean when we say single-sex spaces and why they were ever established. And what's really helpful to know is in the Equalities Act, it mentions gender as being defined as male and female, and then it says what is allowed, discrimination, differences in the treatment of persons on the gender ground, and where embarrassment or infringement of privacy can be reasonably expected to result from the presence of a person of another gender. And I think one of the very powerful tools that we have, and somebody touched on it earlier in terms of legal cases, is this wording. We shouldn't have to demonstrate extreme risk when the wording says embarrassment. And that is actually a reasonable defence for why you want to exclude males from a female space and equally females from a male space. And I'm touching on the female and male stuff because a lot of modern thinking around this is we can get rid of this problem if we simply make all spaces mixed gender. We won't have to address these complaining women because they won't have anything to complain about. Let's let all the men into the women's spaces and all the women into the men's spaces. Let's not have that kind of division anymore. But when we look back in history, we see that that doesn't work. We can go back as far as in the Prisons Act, and reformers like Elizabeth Fry who recognised that, you know, the women in prisons particularly were more vulnerable, and it was considered to be a double punishment if you had them in with males. So we know why these are there. They're there, these rules around spaces are there to protect against risk of double punishment, of violence, of assault, and also against embarrassment, and to protect our privacy. So I won't go on too much, but just to say as well, Danielle, about the exemption in sport. It's strange and bizarre to include such a thing. That's why it was removed by our lovely Aidan O'Riordan in his wonderful contribution to that debate. So just in case you're wondering, it's because it's strange and bizarre to want to protect female sport. That's why it's removed from GRA. But strangely, the GRA doesn't actually mention anything about single-sex spaces or sports or anything like that, and I think we need to go at it with the legislation we have in terms of the Equalities Act. And also to remember that the GRA does not apply to most under 18-year-olds. And so we've produced these guides for schools and for clubs, which outline the law as it applies within those realms. And so these are for under 18-year-olds. You're looking at an average of 3 per year to 16 and 17-year-olds, and obviously those 16 and 17-year-olds roll out. So, you know, you're looking at 3 per year. Every year, it's not cumulative. So a total of 3 per year could challenge their discrimination against not being allowed into the toilets of their preferred gender or to the opposite sex toilets, and everybody else has no basis for a challenge against this if they're under 18 in a school or club, in terms of change rooms and overnights, etc., etc. I was talking to a friend last night just very briefly about her discovery that in their locked swipe key identified changing rooms in work, a man actually accidentally went in and left his bag there and then went out again, and then he couldn't find his bag because he had left it in the women's, not the men's. And it didn't occur to anybody that it was kind of concerning that the swipe key that he held allowed him access to that space. Where we can reasonably expect privacy and no embarrassment, you would expect that those spaces would be actually defended against, but she was a bit horrified to find it wasn't. And I also just want to briefly mention that the privacy and embarrassment goes the other way as well. A lot of men are extremely uncomfortable when women, young women particularly in, say, college campuses, etc., who identify as men, are walking past them as they're at the urinal. This is not popular. Men do not want this just as much as women do. So even though we carry the physical risks, the embarrassment and infringement on privacy remains the same, in my opinion, in both ways, and the same for boys in primary school. So if you're looking at mixed-sex toilets, was one of the first Countess campaigns and was quite successful in getting that kind of blanket policy change, so that now schools have a choice whether or not to include those. I can tell you in my children's former school that the mixed-sex toilets are extremely unpopular. They had a new build with them, and they have an old building with single-sex toilets. Almost all the kids leave the new building, walk across the car park, up the stairs, into the old building and use the toilets there. So really they don't, and when you go in, you will see why, because you walk in the door, you open the double doors, and directly in front of you are the doors of the individual cubicles. So everybody walking in and out of that building can see directly towards the door of the cubicle that somebody is using to perform a private bodily function. And nobody wants that. I don't care how progressive you think you are, you're walking across the car park. So I'm just, so we have these guides available for download. Unfortunately, we didn't get any printed because of the rising costs of absolutely everything. But they are available for download on our website, and we have emailed all secondary schools with them, and with the cover email, and we'll be sending them to primary schools next week. They cover safeguarding, children first, regulations, parental rights, what the Gender Recognition Act actually means, and again, a bit of a social transition in schools and clubs. We also have a deeper dive, which a bit of what Sandra touched on is in there, about the impact on children of 10 years of the GRA, and how that GRA sort of allowed these organisations to build up on their policies. And finally, I just want to say that those kind of policies that they're putting out are a wish list. They're a demand list. They're not based on law. As we saw with the ICCL, they're backing away from what they say you must do, and going back towards you should be nice, don't be rude, etc. And you should is a lot easier to counter with, but I won't. So just to say, yeah, keep fighting back against it. It's okay to be rude.
Right, so we've a couple of questions here that I'm going to put to the panel. Maybe I'll put a couple of questions in, and maybe we'll start back here again with EMER, and then just keep an eye on the time for lunch. So there's a question here: how come our politicians were asleep at the wheel whilst all this was happening? Is there nobody in government who realises this? How are TENI so powerful? EMER, could we think a little bit about the response you got from HR? Because I believe they referenced the TENI, the IBEC policy. So for anyone who doesn't know, IBEC, they advise something like 40,000 different employers around Ireland. And about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I could be wrong, TENI came in and helped them write the policy, which was then rolled out to 40,000 organisations. And I think at the time, a lot of us did contact IBEC and complained about this, because the guidance was a little bit like that recent guidance. It was kind of almost doing it as, you know, you must do this. It literally says, you know, you must accommodate these men, you know, you don't have a choice. Did that make its way into the organisation? And what role do you think it played in how they treated yourself and the other women?
You've said exactly the thing. That was like the Genesis document that, oh, we have to deal with this thing, and who's written about this? Oh, there's a lovely document. IBEC, oh yes, and they're very responsible. Yes, we'll go to IBEC and they've got this guidance, and oh, this is best practice. Great. Now we don't have to do any work, we don't have to think about it, we don't have to write anything ourselves. We just go there and take that down, and it's copy and paste. Are there any other organisations with a policy? Oh, yes. I won't say which ones have. Oh yes, there's a policy. Oh, and that's what it says. Best practice. Oh yes, great. Copy and paste. Now we don't have to do any work. We'll just do best practice. And then they'll tell me, oh, but it's best practice. It's been recommended by IBEC. Therefore, it is the law. It's
endorsed. And so, just if you kind of visualise the map, right? We're up against the GRA came in. Organisations like TENI were empowered to come up with these fictitious policies, which they went and rolled into places like IBEC, which were then rolled out to employers. Like, Fiona, how do we tackle this? Have you any insights from the success that you've had? Is it really just a case that we need cases, and maybe we could go to Danielle then and see, are there any cases coming within the sporting community? Is it just that we need people to stand up like EMER's doing, and what's the next step beyond challenging HR so that we can get some traction?
Yeah. I mean, in sport specifically, what the reviews have found when independent consultants have looked at it is that people who run sport understand how important single-sex provision is. It's when they delegate to the EDI people that things go wrong, and it's a bit illustrated by what Emer said. And so I would say don't waste your time talking to EDI people. You need to get to chief execs, managing directors, general counsels, and say to them, you are exposing this organisation to legal risk. You're going to have lawsuits. Now, whether they do or they don't, that's what everybody fears. It's a huge burden on people to have to bring a legal case. But it is the job of the General Counsel and the board generally to make sure the organisation is running itself so that it's not exposing itself to risk. And it's back to what I said before about self-interest. So by and large, I would say it's about framing it in the terms that organisations understand, which are the things that matter to them. Some people, good people, have got a conscience and a backbone. But it turns out an awful lot of people have neither. So, self-interest.
Very good. So one other question here, Danielle, is the LGFA should get a personal notice of liability letter with relation to the dangers of males and female sports. Like, what is the situation on the ground? Are there any cases likely? I mean, you're very active in this space. What can we expect?
I would say within the next 6 months, there could be at least 2 cases coming off of this specifically. I think the LGFA, now they've completely stonewalled, they haven't been answering us, they haven't been getting back to anybody. A group of parents, I'm not going to name any counties or any places, but there is a group of parents who raised a very real safeguarding issue with the LGFA, which went to their national children's officer, which hasn't been dealt with appropriately or in any way at all. So this is something that possibly will be on their desk within the next 6 months or so. Also then, Gaels For Fair play are looking at possibly taking out an injunction or an indirect discrimination against them within the next little while. I don't want to say too much, obviously, because we're still in talks with solicitors and barristers and how this is all going to go. But it's at the stage now. For the past 3 years, we have tried contacting the LGFA and the GAA and numerous different, just to meet and talk and go through everything. They've absolutely refused it. They keep putting us off, telling us no, they had to do this. So I think it's at the stage now where we're telling them, well, we have to do this. So we'll see.
Watch that space. Sorka, anything on your end? I mean, you're also on the ground, and the sports is, something that the Countess is very active in. What's your thoughts? What can we expect? Are you seeing some green shoots as well?
I think as Fiona touched on it earlier, a lot of the organisations in Ireland are they don't want to touch it at all. You have to remember that the fear of lawsuit from the other side is probably stronger now than the fear of lawsuits from us. So it's difficult, but I think it's becoming more and more untenable for organisations to pretend it's not happening. So yeah, we'll keep our campaign of keeping in touch with them and emailing them every so often and keep knocking on the doors and seeing what's happening. I think the change from the IOC, if it goes the way we hope it will be very significant, and that will have the exact same effect it had previously, where it will trickle down, hopefully first at international governing body level and then at national governing body level. So a lot of them refer to the international bodies at the moment. It's difficult enough to get anyone. You have to remember as well, we're a very small country, and a lot of the people working in sport in Ireland are not full-time, or they wear a lot of different hats, and it's really extremely difficult to actually get them to do anything that isn't extremely urgent, and fairness for women and girls just never seems to be at the top of the list.
Thank you. Any questions from the floor? I have a few other little questions here in front, but does anyone want to put their hands up? I'll come over to you.
Sorry, I haven't even formed the question in my head, but we're talking about sport, but Scouting Ireland will be a huge issue. I'm involved in Scouting, my daughter's in Scouting. It's an all-Ireland organisation, so obviously there must be some impact there from the UK ruling, but it's a very difficult one because although it's a volunteer organisation, you can be kicked out. So people don't want to risk being excluded from something they really enjoy. But in terms of overnight accommodation, there's no guidance I've emailed the safeguarding manager several times and just been totally stonewalled. So it'll be interesting to see what advice other organisations like yourselves could give in terms of interrogating Scout in Ireland. Sorry, that wasn't really a question.
So does any of the panel, Danielle, you want to talk to that?
Now I understand where you're coming from, because on numerous occasions the LGFA has actually been asked, you've created this policy, but you haven't sent any guidance to any club across the country on how to deal with it if there is a child identifying as a girl on a team. So I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's just a matter of, you have to keep at them. You say, maybe Fiona will have more insights because she's dealt with them. What it is, you have to keep at them and put the pressure back on them, saying, look, this is happening. Give us guidance on what you want us to do. And I understand the fear of being kicked out. I'm exactly in that same. I still play Gaelic football. I know I may not look like it, but I still give it a wee go. I'm not going to stop or hang up the boots just yet. And I have a young daughter and I have a son. They both play sports. And you're sitting there fearing, well, if I do this, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to be, oh God, they're her children. We can't have them on the team where they're not going to progress. We can't hold that fear back. We have to protect everybody else's children, whether they think we are or not. That's what it comes down to, is you have to do what you can to protect everybody's children. One quick thing to add is that a lot of the time this issue doesn't really touch men. A bit of embarrassment in the toilets, so they don't really care. But what I have found is that dads with daughters absolutely get it. They worry about their daughter because they know what men are like. And so sport, recruit the men, recruit the dads, because they can raise the concern. And then, I know this is terribly sexist, but that's how the world is, that it comes more easily for the sporting authorities to hear that, because instead of hearing that us women are criticising trans women, what they understand is a father quite reasonably saying, some men might be a problem, let's not do this. So that would be one thing, it's just a range of voices. That's
Just to add with these are specific to the 26 counties, but the Northern Ireland angle I think is really important, because actually they have Northern Ireland moves to accept that Supreme Court ruling or apply it in their laws, and they I don't want to make it parse that thing, but the unionist politicians, a bit like the Catholic Church, the people you thought you maybe never wanted to rely on, they are actually very on board with this, and so you might get through much more easily in that route, in an all-island capacity. And the final thing is, they have safeguarding obligations to every single child. They do not have one single obligation to just one single child, and that's again outlined in the guides, and I think it's really important that you focus on that. It's, how are you protecting my child? You have a safeguarding obligation to my child. I don't care about that child, I care about my child, and what are you doing so you can bring it back to their obligations under Children First.